There is a part of you that resists structure, that rebels quietly against schedules, tasks, and obligations. You tell yourself you want discipline, yet your mind recoils at the thought, finds excuses, and drifts toward comfort. You like to believe self-control is a matter of willpower, a battle you can fight with enough determination. But what if the real obstacle is invisible, embedded in the wiring of your brain, quietly shaping choices before awareness even arrives? Most people mistake avoidance for preference, fatigue for limitation, discomfort for inability, but these are not truths, only rehearsed responses. You may imagine yourself capable of rigorous habits, yet the instant discomfort of a small task can ignite resistance, subtle but persistent, almost automatic. It is not laziness, nor moral failing, nor weakness. It is a signal, a mirror, and a story your mind is still telling itself. And when you begin to notice this resistance without judgment, it may feel disturbing because it challenges who you think you are. And this is where things become uncomfortable. You like to believe discipline is a choice, that effort is a matter of conscious decision, and that willpower is the tool that makes it happen. You tell yourself, I just need to push harder. And for a moment, this feels accurate, empowering, like a reliable explanation for success or failure. It is comforting to imagine that your daily routines, your bursts of focus, and your lapses are all within conscious control, neatly aligned with intent. You feel capable because, on the surface, it appears you choose your actions freely. That focus comes when you demand it. That resistance is temporary. Society reinforces this belief relentlessly, praising grit, self-discipline, and determination as virtues, as if the mind were a machine that obeys commands. And so you adopt the story. You are the person who can push through, who willpower alone can overcome discomfort, and that struggle is proof of character. Even small accomplishments feel like victories, confirming the narrative that effort is conscious and resistance is a moral failing, a weakness you must overcome. Yet beneath this comforting story, subtle patterns persist, quietly shaping what you attempt and what you avoid. Long before you even think about it, you may be surprised to discover that the mind's resistance is not a matter of effort, but of expectation, conditioning, and reward, all rehearsed quietly, almost invisibly. And this belief, so deeply held, is only part of the story, leaving out a truth that most never notice. A truth that explains why struggle often feels inevitable. And this is where most people misunderstand what's really happening. If this is already making sense to you, it means you're starting to notice patterns most people never see. Subscribe and let's keep exploring how the mind really works. Now, this is where things start to get uncomfortable. What if the willpower you rely on is only a surface layer, a story your mind tells to feel competent? You may believe you are choosing to push through discomfort, yet often your resistance begins before thought has time to respond. The instant you imagine a difficult task, a subtle tension rises, a quiet inner pushback that feels almost involuntary, almost predetermined. Even when you consciously intend to act, the mind recalls past avoidance, discomfort, and resistance, nudging behavior along familiar pathways. It is unsettling to realize that your choices may be guided more by habit than conscious intention, a subtle betrayal of the self you think you are. You may feel frustration, even shame, at this revelation, but it is not moral failure, it is pattern, repetition, conditioning. The gap between intention and action is rarely random. It is rehearsed, ingrained, and quietly rewarded in ways you rarely notice. And yet, this insight does not arrive with a solution, only a deepening awareness, a lingering question about why discipline feels like resistance. To understand this, we need to look deeper into the wiring of the brain, into how habits, reward, and discomfort are intertwined from early life. The brain begins mapping patterns of reward and avoidance, discomfort and relief, effort and pleasure. Every time you resist a task or drift toward comfort, neural circuits quietly adjust, reinforcing pathways that favor immediate ease over long-term gain. Discomfort is not inherently negative. It is a signal, a guide, a message the brain interprets in terms of survival, efficiency, and perceived safety. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for deliberate planning, often competes with older systems like the basal ganglia and limbic regions, which prioritize energy conservation and familiar responses. Even when the mind tells itself, "I must act," these older circuits subtly influence behavior, nudging you toward patterns that have been rewarded in the past. Pleasure and relief are powerful teachers. Avoiding discomfort triggers small dopamine hits, reinforcing the behavior, while delaying gratification often feels unnatural, even punishing. Over time, the brain creates a habitual bias toward ease, producing an invisible tension when discipline is required, a tension that feels almost automatic. This is why starting tasks can feel so difficult, why routines collapse even when intention is strong, why self-control often appears weaker than it should be. You may recognize the pattern in daily life: procrastination, distraction, excuses, inner negotiations, each one quietly strengthening the circuits that resist effort. The brain is not against you, it is optimizing for patterns it knows, using shortcuts that served survival in subtle ways, rewarding behavior that maintains identity and comfort. Even the resistance you dislike has its function. It gives the brain information. It signals the stakes. It produces a hidden reward your mind unconsciously values. And there is something the brain gains from this, something quietly sustaining resistance, something that reaches deeper into your sense of self. Every resistance, every subtle avoidance carries a hidden reward your mind rarely admits. When you delay a task, when you hesitate, a quiet satisfaction arises, almost invisible. As if proving something to yourself, it whispers, "You are human, you feel, you matter," and the tension that comes with discipline transforms into reassurance of identity, subtle but persistent. Even discomfort has its allure. The rehearsal of struggle confirms that you are attempting, that effort exists even if incomplete, and that you are entitled to relief. This reward is not obvious. It hides beneath judgment, under frustration, beneath the expectation that progress should feel immediate or smooth. Every time you choose ease over effort, the brain records it as familiar, safe, and validated, reinforcing the loop that perpetuates resistance. And when you push yourself despite discomfort, the brain often rewards with fleeting pleasure, a sense of control. Yet it simultaneously clings to the comfort you have always known. The interplay is subtle. Resistance and reward are intertwined, creating a pattern that feels both frustrating and strangely comforting. It is here that most people stumble, not because they lack discipline, but because their mind quietly collects emotional payoffs from every hesitation, every delay. And this connects directly to identity, to the stories you tell yourself about who you are, about what effort and discomfort mean in your life. Over time, resistance and its hidden payoff become part of the person you recognize as yourself. You are not merely someone who procrastinates or hesitates. You are the person who struggles with effort, the one who recoils from discomfort, the one defined by internal friction. Logic alone rarely breaks this pattern because it does not operate at the level of identity. You may know the brain is wired to resist, yet knowing does not dissolve the subtle attachment. Attempts to force discipline through willpower often backfire because they challenge the self-concept itself, threatening the quiet internal reward system that has been in place for years. Even small tasks are filtered through this identity. The brain interprets effort as something external, potentially threatening, reinforcing hesitation even in moments of conscious commitment. The loops continue silently. Avoidance validates identity. Effort triggers subtle anxiety, each reinforcing the same self-image, unshakable and largely unconscious. You may feel frustration, guilt, or shame, but these emotions only strengthen the narrative, proving to the brain that its approach has meaning, that its subtle payoffs matter. The mind has created a network where identity, reward, and resistance are inseparable, producing both comfort and limitation simultaneously. To challenge the pattern, one must first see it, not with moral judgment, but with recognition of its purpose, its hidden logic, and its intimate connection to self. And if you can glimpse this pattern clearly, you may begin to see a way to experience discipline differently, in a way that does not fight identity, but subtly shifts it. What if discipline is not about forcing yourself against discomfort, but about seeing discomfort differently, as a signal rather than an obstacle? The mind has taught you to resist, yes. But this resistance is not the enemy, it is information, a reflection of values, priorities, and identity. Every moment of hesitation, every subtle inner pushback, carries intelligence about what you unconsciously want and fear, about the stories you continue to tell yourself. The struggle you associate with effort may be misunderstood. The tension is not punishment. It is a messenger, quietly pointing toward growth and awareness. Imagine observing discomfort without judgment, letting the mind display its preferences without resistance, noticing the patterns without labeling them right or wrong. This perspective shifts the very definition of discipline. It is no longer a battle against the self, but an exploration of self, of the patterns and payoffs you inhabit. The tasks you resist become mirrors, showing not your inadequacy, but the wiring of habit, the subtle emotional rewards, the scripts your brain has rehearsed for years. The discomfort is not to be defeated, it is to be acknowledged, understood, and gradually reframed as part of the process rather than the problem. Even small awareness changes the texture of experience. Hesitation no longer signals failure, effort no longer feels unnatural, and choice begins to emerge from observation rather than caution. And as this shift deepens, the internal dialogue softens, the tension lessens, and a quiet recalibration begins, imperceptible, but profoundly altering the way effort feels. You may notice that what once felt like resistance now carries nuance, complexity, and insight, a subtle invitation rather than a threat. And in this reframing, there is space for a quiet internal change, one that does not demand effort but allows it to arrive naturally. The shift is subtle, like noticing a breeze in a room you have always felt still, barely perceptible, yet transformative. You may begin to observe hesitation, discomfort, and resistance without reacting, noting them as patterns rather than verdicts, as information rather than threats. Even the smallest moments of awareness create space between stimulus and response, allowing effort to emerge without coercion, tension to exist without judgment. You may feel surprise at the calm, at the soft space where choice arises naturally, almost unnoticed, a quiet contrast to the struggle you once expected. It is not about perfect adherence or mastery, nor about silencing discomfort entirely. It is about noticing gently and letting awareness guide behavior. The mind continues to offer reward for resistance, but now the observer notices, recognizes, and sometimes allows it to pass without attachment. Subtle shifts accumulate over time. Hesitation loses its authority, discomfort becomes informative, and the texture of effort changes, almost imperceptibly, yet profoundly. This quiet shift does not arrive with fanfare or clarity, only with patient observation, with reflection, with a growing sense that things can feel different without forcing them. And as this awareness settles, it invites a deeper reflection, a moment to consider not only what you do, but who you are when effort and resistance coexist. Now look at yourself quietly, without judgment, without explanation, noticing the subtle tension that once defined every task. See the old patterns, the familiar hesitation. the internal dialogue that measured effort against resistance, and realize it has been rehearsed more than chosen. The reflection is uncomfortable because it shows both the actor and the observer, the part of you that struggles and the part that watches silently. You may recognize that what you thought was willpower was often repetition, and what you assumed was resistance was quietly rewarded, part of your identity all along. Even the discomfort, the subtle recoil from effort, is not evidence of weakness but evidence of a mind that has learned, adapted, and survived through patterns. The silent awareness you now bring does not erase these patterns, it illuminates them, creates space, and softens their grip on your choices. You are not failing nor broken, you are witnessing the scripts, the payoffs, the hidden rewards that have quietly guided behavior for years. And in this quiet observation, you may notice a new question emerging. Who are you when resistance loses its authority? When effort feels possible without struggle? The mirror does not demand an answer, only reflection, only awareness, a subtle pause between action and interpretation, and in that pause, you may glimpse the possibility of a mind that experiences discipline not as struggle, but as a quietly chosen rhythm. The change is subtle, almost invisible. A quiet recalibration that shifts the texture of experience rather than forcing behavior. You may notice it in small ways. Hesitation softens, discomfort becomes informative, and effort no longer feels unnatural but emerges naturally from observation. There are no instructions here, no rigid formula. The shift is internal, personal, and quietly profound, arriving only through awareness and reflection. As you leave this reflection, carry the question gently with you. How does discipline feel when it is no longer resistance, when discomfort becomes information, when effort is quietly chosen? The answer is not mine to give, and it does not arrive all at once. It is yours to discover, slowly, in the moments where observation precedes reaction, and choice emerges naturally.